Hello everybody, welcome back to story time. In this video, we're going to be reading Halmoni's Day by Edna Ko Burkaw, pictures by Robert Hunt. And this is a story about a little girl, a Korean American girl, who gets a visit from her Korean grandmother. So we'll actually read the description. Sometimes when you read books, you can find a summary in the back side of the front cover. So in this summary, it says, Jennifer's grandmother, Halmoni, is visiting all the way from Korea, and she's arrived just in time for Grandparents' Day at school. Jennifer is excited, but she's also worried. She doesn't know Halmoni very well, and her grandmother doesn't speak English. What will this grandmother's day be like for Halmoni and Jennifer? At school, the children have prepared for Grandparents' Day with special projects and awards. As the grandparents collect their awards, they share a favorite story or memory with the class. Halmoni's turn is last, her voice chiming softly as Jennifer's mother translates for her. The story Halmoni tells, a spellbinding memory of her childhood in war-torn Korea, shows Jennifer that there are many ways to express love, ways that cross barriers of languages, time, and place. Edna Ko Burkaw draws on her own Korean American heritage to create a moving story of intergenerational relationships with characters that spring to life in exquisite oil paintings by Robert Hunt. Do you have any grandparents from a different country? What's your experience like when they come and visit? The silver gate finally swung open, and a crowd of passengers eagerly pressed forward. Jennifer stood on tiptoe as she searched for Halmoni, her grandmother from Korea. Is that her? She cried, pointing toward a tall, cheerful woman in a bright floral dress and matching hat. No, look, there she is, her father exclaimed. Jennifer spun around to see a small woman in an elaborate silk gown approaching them. She chattered in Korean as Jennifer's mom wrapped her own mother in a huge hug. Blinking hard, all Jennifer could think about was school the next day. Halmoni had arrived just in time for Grandparents' Day. Jennifer wondered what her classmates would think of this tiny woman in strange clothes. Halmoni didn't even speak English. Aren't you going to welcome your grandmother? Jennifer's mother whispered, gently nudging her forward. 안녕하세요, she stammered, struggling to remember the Korean greeting she had practiced over and over at home. Embarrassed, Jennifer lowered her eyes toward the shiny airport floor. She felt two thin arms wrap around her in a tight embrace. Looking up at Halmoni's joyful face, Jennifer smiled shyly. Then she bowed slowly and carefully. Jennifer's parents each took one of Halmoni's bags. Then they walked Halmoni arm in arm through the bustling airport, while Jennifer lagged a few steps behind. Glancing around, she noticed several other Korean ladies dressed like Halmoni. In school, she thought, everyone else's grandmother will be wearing American clothes. Jennifer Yapuda, Halmoni was saying. What did she say? Jennifer asked. She says you're pretty, her mother told her proudly. Jennifer began to feel a little better. There is a 14-hour time difference between here and Korea, Dad explained on the ride home. Halmoni may need to rest when we get back, Mom added, because even though it's close to noontime here, it's still in the middle of the night in Korea. Wow, said Jennifer, wondering what it would be like to live in Halmoni's faraway country. When they arrived home, Jennifer showed Halmoni to the guest room. Then she went downstairs into the kitchen. Mom, Dad, are you sure Halmoni should come to school tomorrow? Jennifer asked. Maybe she wants to just rest and relax here instead. I mean, Halmoni's got to be tired from her long flight and everything. Jennifer's voice trailed off as Halmoni came into the kitchen. She picked up Jennifer's hand and gave it a warm squeeze. Jennifer gazed into the kind eyes twinkling with excitement. She gave her grandmother's hand a gentle squeeze back, wondering how Halmoni could understand so much when she did not speak English. I'm sure Halmoni is just fine, honey, Mom replied with a reassuring smile and wink. As Jennifer helped set the table for brunch, her father suggested that she tell them all about the events planned at school the next day. And here is Halmoni holding her hand. Well, everyone made up special Grandparents' Day awards, Jennifer began, and Mrs. Hillner asked that the parents be prepared to share a favorite story or memory with the class. As Dad translated for Halmoni, Jennifer leaned over and whispered at her grandmother's ear. But only if you want to, Halmoni. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. Halmoni smiled warmly and answered back in Korean. She says she'll have to think about what to say, Dad told Jennifer, but I have a feeling that Halmoni will come up with something pretty special. And here they are eating some Korean food. You can't really see the details too much, but they have some soup, some fermented cabbage, some rice, dumplings. Have you ever tried Korean food? At school the next day, everyone was busy finishing their Grandparents' Day projects and awards when Mrs. Hillner placed a brightly decorated box on her desk. If you are done with your award, please put it in this box, she told the class. Jennifer had covered her envelope with drawings of daffodils and tulips. As she brought it up to Mrs. Hillner, she turned the envelope over, wondering if her award was such a good idea after all. Then her best friend Martha beckoned to her. Jennifer, want to help me put up the family trees? Sure. Jennifer tucked her envelope carefully into the box and hurried over to help her friend. I can't wait until everyone comes, Martha exclaimed, handing Jennifer the masking tape. I hope there's enough time to show them my science project. Jennifer quietly passed strips of masking tape to Martha, thinking again about how far away Halmoni lived. She was the only grandparent Jennifer had ever known, yet Jennifer could barely remember her last visit 4 years ago. If only I knew her better, she wished. And here is Jennifer's friend posting the family trees on the board. Have you ever made a family tree? After lunch, Mrs. Hillner brought in more chairs. The children pushed their desks to one side to make room for everyone to sit down. At exactly 1:30, the grandparents began entering the room. Jennifer's face flushed when she saw her mother and grandmother enter. After everyone was seated, Mrs. Hillner greeted the crowded classroom. Welcome, grandparents and parents. Thank you all for coming. We have an exciting program planned for today. The children worked very hard on the wonderful family projects here on display. They even created their own Grandparents' Day awards for you. As we present the awards, we would love to hear any stories or memories you might want to share. Have fun and remember, today is your day. And here is Mrs. Hillner. Jennifer thought about those last words. Halmoni's Day. She whispered to herself and turned to look at her grandmother sitting quietly in her beautiful silk dress. Jennifer couldn't help but notice how different she was from other grandparents, dressed in their running shoes and casual clothes. From across the room, Halmoni caught Jennifer's stare and smiled at her. Jennifer smiled back and felt her heart begin to pound. So look at everybody else's clothing. And then we have Halmoni in her pretty dress. Lauren volunteered to pick the first envelope. This award is for the grandparent or grandparents who have the most grandchildren enrolled in the school. Christopher's grandparents collected that award and named all 11 of their grandchildren out aloud. Next, Martha's grandparents recalled babysitting her for the first time. We stood by Martha's crib for hours just waiting to play with her, but instead she slept all day. The classroom filled with laughter and applause as the other grandparents received their awards and shared special family memories. There was an award for the youngest and then the oldest grandparent, and one for the grandparent who had served the longest in the military. There was even one for the best runner, Joshua's grandmother, who had just completed her 6th marathon. Before long, Mrs. Hillner was reaching into the box for one final award. This award is for the grandparent who has traveled the farthest to get here today. So here's one of the awards. Best runner. That was Jennifer's award. All eyes turned towards Halmoni as Jennifer sank way down into her seat. Mom translated for Halmoni, and together they stood to accept the award. I'd like to introduce my mother from South Korea, Mrs. Lee, Mom said. Jennifer calls her Halmoni. She explained that Halmoni means grandmother in Korean. Then Halmoni began to speak, her voice chimingly soft as Jennifer's mom translated her words for the class. What I remember most when I was your age were the stories mother would tell me about father, an officer in the army who went away to fight in the Korean War. The war lasted for 3 years, and and after it was over, we anxiously awaited father's return. Instead, we did not hear from him for almost 2 more years. She paused as a hush fell over the classroom. Mother had told me why he had to leave our peaceful village, and she promised he would return someday. I never doubted her words, but worried that he might not find us or remember me. I had forgotten so much about him as the years passed that I wondered if he would forget me too. Halmoni's voice quivered, but she continued her story. Just before I turned 9, I was working in the fields on an unusually hot day when I noticed a man approaching from the distance. I raced toward him as fast as I could. I ran and ran until I got close enough to see that it wasn't my father. It couldn't be. This man walked with a cane and was too gaunt, not at all like the proud man I wanted to remember. I backed away, my face red with embarrassment, and my heart felt like it would burst from the flood of tears I tried so hard to contain. The school bell rang, and the sounds of racing footsteps in the hallway filled the classroom, but inside the class, no one moved. As I turned away, the man began singing an old song that I instantly recognized. It brought forth memories of father, ones I thought I had forgotten. Suddenly, I could picture us chasing crickets after dark and laughing together. I knew at that moment that father was home. I ran to him and we embraced. He held me so tight. I remember how safe I felt in his arms. I never wanted to let go. Jennifer felt the tears that had been welling up in her eyes spill down her cheeks. The years we had spent apart made our time together so meaningful. But as the years passed, father's constant coughing gradually took away his beautiful voice. We learned to communicate without words. The touch of a hand or a simple nod of the head conveyed so much. Father's expressive eyes were truly the windows to his heart and soul. Through them, I could understand his thoughts and his feelings and feel his courage and kindness. Today, I find that the greatest joy of being a grandparent is seeing parts of myself, my husband, and my parents live on through my children and their children. No one could remind me more of my own father than my American granddaughter, Jennifer. Halmoni finished, her face radiant. Jennifer jumped to her feet and made her way to the front of the classroom, tears still falling. She kissed Halmoni warmly. "Today is your day," she whispered. "Thank you for making it mine too." Here's a close-up. What a beautiful story. And that is the end of Halmoni's day. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you want to read this story when you come back to school, you can find it in the star section, which is the picture book section of the library, under BER. BER is the first 3 letters of the last name of the author. The author is the person who wrote the story. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next video.